Okay, think we're live. And after like 4 attempts, this is the fifth. I think I finally figured out how to configure this OBS and all the windows. I'm not gonna go into it today, but in short, I want to let's align on purpose. Wait, why do I use like such serious language? Let's align on this meeting. This is the reason I call this. Okay, crap. So I want to start practicing my streaming skill, and I don't really know what type of content and what I want to do, or even what I'm going to show. But let's try. So I decided for today I'm going to try and just use the streaming activity to read. Might as well help myself from procrastinating on some tasks. So in short, I want to spend some time reading this article. It's 6,000 words long. Wait, is it 6,000 words or is it 6,000? Yeah, it is 6,324 words. And I haven't gotten around to reading it since I clicked this, not yesterday, but in a couple of days. So let's try and use this so we can read together, no matter whether or not you're interested in this, but you know. So this is Scott Alexander's blog post, and he talks about this book called Surfing Uncertainty, and I want to be able to actually see what he's talking about here. So I don't even think you need to see my face with this. Alright. I am not gonna keep talking and I'll just stay silent and I'll just try and go through the essay. And I'm going to paste the link in the chat. I think it would persist the link later once this is published. But there's the article, and I'm just going to start reading and shut the fuck up. Really? Is this true? A real theory of how the brain works. They figured it out. Andy Card, yeah. So I actually have read the first couple of paragraph here. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that stood out to me when I was reading this, but this is a good gist of what this book is about. So if you want 100 pages of apology along the lines of this may not look embodied, but if you squint, you'll see how embodied it is. This is your book. So I think that's a pretty good framing. So if you're interested in understanding that or just getting to know that, keep reading. It's also your book if you want to learn about predictive processing at all. And I think this part stood out to me because I'm interested in, as you know, uh, the large language model that has been the advancement in LLMs. What LLM really does fundamentally is they are a system of predictive processing. So they would predict words. Sorry for actually over elaborating on this. I'll just shut up now as far as I know. Comprehensive. And to note that this article was published in 2017. So I haven't read the book. I have gotten the book, but it's not, I haven't read it. And I tend to do this where before reading a book, I would go around and either find summaries or an interview, like kind of a podcast or interview with the author about the book. Usually there's like the Google Talk version of it, talks at Google. So I tend to find that during those interviews or during those talks, the author would have covered all the basic arguments that the book, basically you don't need to read it once you've watched the interview, and you'll only just spend like 45 minutes usually during those interviews to actually get whether or not you want to read it. And as you know, just like most meetings can be emails, then most non-fiction books can be a blog post or can be just a podcast episode. But okay, that's enough like blar for this book. So let's see. Let's keep on reading. Pain versus consensus. So we never. Let me actually zoom in a bit here because I think the font could be a bit small. So let's zoom in there. So I think this is a good setup to for future reading. But okay, that's fine. So we never see the world as a retina sees it. In fact, it would be a pretty hard perception. Yep. So our visual engine is actually a very first. It's a very complex system, and it's also the visual processing, the parts that process visual experience or our visual sense is the most resource intensive, and it takes up in our brain, like it takes up the most real estate and processing power of the brain. And there's a couple of theories around the why we dream, which is it's to process all of the visual experience that we have, like consolidating them during our waking hour. Yeah, so anyway, predictive processing begins by asking, how does this happen, by what process? Multi-layer prediction. Maybe I should clip this to Evernote and highlight while I'm reading. I think that's a better use of our time. Because should I just stream my reading and plus taking notes, so I can have like one window at the top and then the note taking at the bottom, so you can see which parts I'm extracting, like as if you care. But both streams. So this part is interesting. So both streams contain not only data but estimates of the precision of that data. Basically, they're the stream of data coming in and information coming in are just that, right? But aside from that process, we interpret those input based on our past experience, which is the top-down talked about here, or is it a bottom up? I think it's the bottom up. So we make sense and we label what we see in two threads. So this is key, right? They interface with each other, right? Probabilistically. But this reminds me of something that who was the guy from Stratechery? Yeah, I can't remember his name. Something Thompson. So yeah, not the point. So when he was interviewing Matt Friedman and Daniel Gross from the two AI practitioners, they were talking about how visually, our visual senses is probabilistic, works probabilistically. The way that it works is probabilistic. Can't remember the way it was described, but the difference between text and images, basically, yeah, something around that. So they were talking about the generative AI that was like comparing ChatGPT, which generates text. They operate on the text realm, compared to Midjourney, DALL-E, the images generative image generation systems. First is that the text model is larger. The model itself are larger compared to the images one. And why? Is because we can afford to be more probabilistic and less deterministic in images. While text, you need to be actually accurate. You can't really generate like 4 fingers. By the time we read the text, it needs to make perfect sense. You can't really jumble the character around. But our visual is very forgiving. We can see an image, and whatever gap is there, our brain makes up for it. Like we can make, like, no matter how crappy the image is, we will be able to decipher or interpret, oh, it's a human, right? It's an elephant. We can even see what's not there. Like, yeah, this is when you're watching a cloud, like cloud watching, you see shapes that are not actually there. I mean, of course, the cloud there's no elephant in the cloud. You just see it there. So anyway, this is like being long-winded, but I don't care. This is my channel. I can spend whatever. I can do whatever I want here. Each level, so I'm talking to myself and I'm reading and I'm thinking out loud actually. So each level, yeah. So Bayes, I can't remember why I go into this tangent, but Bayes. So Bayes is basically you keep on updating what your interpretation is based on the new data, incoming data. And that's basically the description of the operating in probabilistic mode. So first, sense data and prediction may more or less match. In this case, behavior stay quiet, keeping all is well, so there's no plot twist there. And the higher layer will never hear about it. So it's like all the noises are filtered, and they were just they keep on predicting. So the low precision sense data may contradict the high. I think no surprise there. So if there's a conflict between the high precision and the prediction, then it would get overridden because the prediction they are probably wrong. So I actually read, I don't read out loud usually, but I feel self-conscious by the time I'm reading here. I need to kind of sound out where I am on the text. But this is probably silly. And so, but yeah, I might just turn off the streaming and I'll stream again by the time I'm done with the essay and then go through the essay again and just talk about what I think about different bits in the text. So yeah, this is just a trial anyway, so let's go. I have bandwidth to spare, so and yeah. At this rate, I think we'll be done reading in 4 hours if I keep on elaborating and rambling about um, different random thoughts that came to my head. Okay, the result is perception, which is the P theory describing a control hallucination. This is E. Yep, this is no surprise. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're just seeing through our very limited, very subjective. We think we see the world like everybody sees the world the way that we see it, but it's not the case. Where you see, you predict, you interpret, like the things that you see, your senses are determined is a function of your past experience, and it's also a function of your biological faculty. So you see different shades of color than animals, for example, but even between people, you have different, and you'll never like you have different architecture. The architecture of our brain differs from person to person, and in a way, you cannot really find out how they are different until there's some specific either study or some examples where you remember the dress, at some point in, I think, is it before the pandemic or during the pandemic, like 2020, where there's this dress that people are split between, is it a gold and white dress or is it a blue and black dress, right? And it apparently they're like, and they're both valid interpretation, but some people, the way that their retina is structured, the way the light it reflects the light and stuff like that, it it made them see the gold and white versus the black and blue. And you can look at the same image at different time of the day and actually see the different color. Like basically in the morning, maybe if you're looking at the screen under the sun, yeah, so depending on how much light I think that went into your retina at that point, and the way however flexible your retina is, uh, you will see different colors at different times. So yeah, back to the point that the article was talking about here. You're not seeing the world. You're just seeing the world. There's no objective interpretation of the world. You just see what you see. Like maybe the way that you see the world are more mainstream, not mainstream, but like uh, your biology is like wired. More people are wired your way compared to maybe some subset of people who are wired a bit differently. But yeah, that's the point. So enough talk. Oh, let's give some examples. So most of you probably, okay, I think this is just elaborating on the point that different people see different things. So blah, blah, blah. And this is another good examples. You can read it. So basically, if I can summarize, image is very forgiving, while text, you need to be very precise. I mean, if you hear something, a language, right? If you go back to language, if you read just like this one, a jumbled text, you can still make sense of it. But by the time you hear something that's jumbled, it's gibberish, right? You can't really make sense what it's talking about. But yeah, perception. So this is blah blah blah. So low quality video. You can still make out what the video is about. I assume that's what he's trying to say here. And then so this is a good one. You've listened to Never Gonna Give You Up for 10 hours, time for payoff. Let's use this theory to explain everything. All right, I think this is starting to get interesting. Instead of just me over elaborating on things. Right, yeah, attention. Confidence interval of your prediction. Okay, so this is one definition. Since data within that confidence, right? Being in a low attention mode, it means that you're just taking in the input and letting your high level prediction fill in the rest. But if you go into the high attention mode, then you're going to pay more attention. It's an oxymoron thing to say, but so you've definitely heard about the gorilla experiment where if you haven't, then just go look for it, pause the video and go look for it. But the gist of it is like, if you watch the video with the prompt, look for something strange happening in the midst of blah, blah, then you will see the gorilla. But if you're not primed that way by the time you're watching the video, then you will miss the gorilla. Confidence in So one of the things that I kind of want to riff off a bit here is when it comes down to it, we are a very computationally bounded creatures. So the way that we see the world is already very limited or subjective, or just it's very selective. But there's also this element of we we're very linear, right? And we make sense of things. We look for narrative to make sense of things. We're single threaded basically. We don't have like CPUs. We can't really consciously, right? I'm talking consciously. Like, of course, there's a lot of multiple um, processes that we're not conscious of, and it's running like our digestion, our like just staying alive. But in terms of cognitive processing, it's a single thread process. So by the time you feel like you're multitasking, it's actually just you're switching back and forth really quick, depending on what the activities are. But and what kind of, like, if you're driving, sometimes some people don't, but most of the time you can do other things that, like, by the time your body goes on autopilot. So by the time you're walking, for example, you don't need to run your conscious attention on the walking activity. So you can actually think by the time you're walking, right? And blah, blah, blah. So extreme blind spot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So first was attention, and then the second is imagination, simulation, dreaming. So imagine a house. Mm-hmm. Think how surprising is it that you can imagine the house at all. It's really high level concept. House has been Why do our brains have this apparently useless talent? So imagining. The highest level of our brain makes prediction in form of sense data. They're not just saying, I predict that guy over there is a policeman. They're generating the image of a policeman, cashing it out in terms of sense data and colliding it. Perception. Okay. If perception is controlled hallucination, that's quite an apt description. Like, we if we think about like how we interpret things are very probabilistic and very subjective, then in a way we are, to some degree, everybody's hallucinating right now, right? And perception is controlled hallucination. I like this. I'm just going to make a note of this in my note taking app. Just like this. Okay, that's so interesting. Dreams are those thought that writers playing around with and so unconstrained by anything. Yeah. So by the time you're dreaming, this conscious process of correcting and calibrating and keeping a reality check on your perception or your hallucination is not happening. So it's unconstrained by the time you're dreaming, or very weakly constrained by bottom up. Yeah. So there's another one that's interesting. So a lot of people claim higher levels than of this. lucid dreaming, astral, predictive processing, very simple. The generative model. This reminds me of an article from Kevin Kelly that what's it called? Let's see. Here it is. So I read this article the other day. Kevin Kelly has this theory, which I don't know how much I agree with, but the premise is quite similar, where he's arguing that whatever mechanism is driving our dream, the dreaming activity, is the same process that is happening in the neural networks that behind the generative AI systems. So I don't know how much I agree with that, because I feel this is a very high level I can't even pronounce the word, anthropoformal, yeah, I'm not gonna try, but anyway, he's making analogy on the basis. I can't really see the basis. Like it's almost like you're projecting what he thinks is happening onto systems that are built differently than compared to our biology. Yeah, I'm going to also paste the link here, so if anybody wants to read it themselves, it's not as dense as the previous article that we were reading, but another reason why I don't really buy the idea that our dream no, I'm not gonna go into this today, but I made some notes about this, so let me see if I have it here. AK.org here. So set here. So the memory is always generated, not recalled. Oh yeah. So one of the things that he claims or he theorized in the article is that when memory is, let's see, recall. What did he say? Here. Their incredibly specific results are like memories that are produced rather than recall. So I think, not I think, there are studies that said that memories are indeed, so by the time we're remembering things, it's not that we're recalling something real, right? I mean, we basically, by the time we remember things, we actually regenerate whatever happened. So it's always generated, it's not retrieval. So I don't know why he's making this as if it's still a hypothesis, because it's already proven. And the idea that he said that his dreams are very here. So when I'm dreaming, I'm receiving images and stories that are produced for me, not really by me. And I don't experience this. And like if we continue, same with generative AI, which produces images via the prompts that go beyond the power of the prompt words and much more dependent. So yeah, Well, it's been 34 minutes and we barely got through half of the article. Is it right? Okay, let's see how much longer we have to go. So how many points does he have here? Shit, there's still a lot. A 3. So let's go back and go through it really quickly. Priming. Okay. So this is where we left off. This is classic. Kind of hungry. There's a philosophical debate which I'm not too familiar with, and supervised learning is possible. Yep. So it's natural selection of models, of perceptual models. Yes, right. Hyper priors, extreme basic assumptions about the world that becomes. For example, I feel like I need to actually start. Before starting reading, I need to explain how I got to the article, what the article is about, what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping to get out of the article, because you guys just don't have the context why this is interesting, for example, and why. So what, right? How how is it important? Why is it relevant? Do you want to? Why is it interesting to you? How is it going to help you? Thought experiment. Yeah. So whether or not there's this thing called hyper prior, suddenly give an insight. This part reminds me of a book called How You Feel by James Trezillian, talking about basically, proprioceptive sense data is, if you close your eyes, you still are able to get a spoon into your mouth. So, or you go into a small opening between doors, then you kind of know how much you should turn. So you basically you don't need to see, and you just know how wide you are, things like that. So there's this sense. By the time we're thinking about senses, we might define them as very external. So we see, we touch, we smell, we what else? We hear things. I mean, it's like external. External senses are our the way our bodies are equipped to take in external stimuli. But the one other sense that we didn't usually classify, or we like not talked about enough in the book, like that how you feel book, it introduced this concept of, well, I don't know if it's the first book that talks about this, but at least I learned about it in that book. Is that proprioceptive is the internal sense. Basically, how do you feel? How do you know how your body? How do you know about your own body? So it's internal sense. There's an easy, move your joints, this and that. If you want to lift your arm, your brain just predicts really, really strongly that your arm has been lifted, and then lets the lower level strive to minimize prediction error to do the wrist. Okay, just the idle thought. It's the actual motor program. Joint sense, proprioception, the exact tension levels of various muscle, and finally ends up in a particular fluid movement. Tickling yourself. Organisms are continually adjusting out their own action, trying to predict the movement of an antelope in the temperatures of the hyperprior, and that the body probably learns pretty early is that hyperprior. This also explains why you can't tickle yourself. Your body predicts and adjusts away your own action, leaving only an attenuated version. Placebo effect is here. Okay, so far, I think I'm not gonna read this book because I still don't really. So I think I clicked on this summary because I was trying to figure out, like I was down on some rabbit hole, and let's see, what question was I trying to get into earlier? So, surfing or skirting. Oh, actually, sorry, I landed on this article because Kevin Kelly's article. So the thing that I was veering away at some point. This mirrors predictive processing model of perception as detailed in this book, and where perception is explored as controlled hallucination. Okay. So Kevin Kelly didn't talk about this book, but this bit is a comment that somebody made on Kevin Kelly's blog post about this. So let me just make a note because I want to be able to follow the thread. Line of reasoning, who argues what, and we comment on the post. So a reader of that blog post referred to this article that we were reading, and I think This is just me following the rabbit hole. Neurochemistry, autism. Huh. Right. So input sensitivity, we do it automatically. We cancel out things that if we expect a noise or we expect some sense coming in, and our brain classified it as inconsequential, then we will cancel it out, and we'll be able to manage that. But some some people on the autistic spectrum cannot do that, so they're very non-tolerant on noise, like the sensory overload. Wow, so complex. As in, how many complex processes that normal people runs to be able to just go through the world, like go through life without driving themselves, well, myself included, crazy. But yeah, it's fascinating. Too precise. Yeah. Even though they have a layer predicting will continue to, it's too precise that for exactly. Yeah. So they'll perceive something. Everything became something, while we ignore a lot of things. Our OS, like if it's well calibrated, then it will classify what's noise and what's a signal accurately. Hmm. Yep. Schizophrenics have this problem in like more extreme. Their predictive models are so screwy. A thought just popped into my head. What if will we have like schizophrenic AI systems? If AI systems, some of them runs on predictive models, then what kind of what's the term? What kind of dysfunctions can we expect from these models? Like, will it have schizophrenia? Will it have like autistic AI, where you just need to tune their sensitivity? I'm just thinking out loud here. Part 5. It means their actions don't get predicted out. It seems like the actions of foreign agent, so delusion. So there's a couple of interesting parallel between our cognitive systems, the artificial digital neural networks, because so it's like dreaming, generating activities, uh, hallucinating, getting feedback, like the reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. That's it. It's a mechanism that we as human also gets, but it's just that we learn. Basically, it's part of the learning activities. Right? learning and teaching. And by the time we train an AI system, their pre-training model, their training model is probably in parallel with us. It's our DNA, and then the pre-training is the womb, right? And yeah, I don't know how accurate that parallel is, but let's say let's start there. And then by the time they were born, we were born. Then during the toddler phase is what these AI models are experiencing. Well, not, yeah, I don't know if using the word experience is accurate, like technically accurate here, but let's say, because I experience infers consciousness, and I don't want to go into the argument about or whether or not these systems are conscious or not. So yeah, but yeah, for the sake of this rambling here, is to say the experience of um, okay, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, basically LHF, our learning and the AI systems learning, they're very similar. Probably because we build it that way, because human built AI systems, and we model it according to the way that we live. Uh, we the our human development phases are we have frameworks to understand our adult development, like human development process stages. And by the time we're building these models, we have a couple of approaches. And one of the approach of deep learning, that's what we model the methodology applied or implemented in deep learning approach. It mirrors our human development. Yeah, I guess you're right. Get to the end of it, like what are we talking about? Or probably it's just like so obvious, so you've been waiting for me to conclude in the last rambling of 5 minutes. Okay. So it's the book talks about also hallucination, binocular rivalry. That's interesting. What is this? Hmm. Phantom limbs. This is also one thing discussed in the you how you feel the book. This is an interesting, funny bit. So let's get no wait. Where did I click the notes? Is it here? Arg. Can't remember where I clicked it from. Oh, here. Okay. So clicked it too. uh, maybe next time, by the time I'm reading, I'm doing this kind of reading on articles again. I'll practice what I had been discovering as a reading a hack, which is by the time you're reading an internet article or an internet essay, start from the bottom because it's more engaging. Usually the summary is there. It's more engaging. It's usually it's there's a lot of throat clearing by the time you start. Like the essay would start with a lot of preamble, like context, background, even some rant from the author. But if you start at the bottom and then you like each paragraph you read from the last paragraph upwards, it kind of makes sense more, and it's just you read in a more engaging way because your brain, it's like memento, right? The movie you start from the end, like, and then you have a mystery, then you start to you need to build, make sense of what is happening here, and then how did we get here and what has happened beforehand. And you, it's just a much more interesting and engaging and exciting, yeah, that's the word. It makes for a more exciting reading experience. So yeah, I forgot about my own advice and my own conclusion, so probably I'll do that for the next article I'm going to read. So speaking of philosophical, there's only one thing that struck me about the PP model. Yeah, this is basically it. If there's a tweet version of this essay, this is going to be it. This is retroactive cheating. It's interesting. Yeah, we would definitely register all the here, the repetition, but we might not catch the here. There's there's the spectrum there. Cleaning, top down, processing very occasionally meddles in bottom up sensation, but as long as you're not schizophrenic, sticks to an advisory role. Yeah, 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 yeah. So top down part, yeah, this is interest or useful to remember. More confidence, input. What is common filter? So that's basically, I just open a couple of links and continue reading at my own time later. I mean, off the screen. And I'm going to look into what this Kalman filter is later as well. And then, yeah, that's it. So I was expecting to learn, well, I mean, to be honest, I don't really enjoy the essay. I mean, it's less insightful or thought-provoking as I expected it to be. It's just saying things that I already kind of agree with. So yeah, I'll stop the streaming here and probably just read something else later. So, but yeah, this is an interesting hour. Well, I spent an hour just scrolling through an essay and rambling about it, but it's been fun. And stream.